I don't know if I could do this again. And I understand that people love investing in second and third time founders. But sometimes if like the first one takes a lot of energy out of you, I don't know if it's necessarily the best idea to invest in the second or third one, because the first one, you really put everything in it. I think each company can choose their own style. To be honest, I don't really care what other companies do. It doesn't really matter to me. But I think for Merge, we are an in-person company, and it is a unique advantage for our business.
Shensi, welcome to Fintech Leaders. How's it going?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm delighted that you're joining. We're going to learn a lot about what you're doing at Merge and also how you got to where you are. I want to start by focusing on your customers, right? And you are building for product people, but also for engineers. How do you gain the respect of your audience? Do you have to be an engineer's engineer to do that? You have to, because product people have to regard you as someone that they can respect, right? What has been your approach?
You have to know what's going on. Unfortunately, it's as simple as that. You have to really know your product inside and out. So I started coding when I was 12, studied computer science in college. After school, I never actually worked professionally as a software engineer, but when we started the company, I had to get back into coding, and a lot of the initial integrations in the product and also a lot of the product was built by me. So I think that has helped me have a lot of validation and just understand the product really deeply. So when I talk to our customers, I'm able to really show a lot of authority.
How long was that gap of you graduating? I know you went into investment banking, I believe private equity after that. Even if it's like a 2-3 year gap, the engineering world moves so quickly, right? How is that readaptation?
It was 5 years, which doesn't seem that long, but it definitely felt very long. And I had to really relearn how to code. Obviously, a lot of the concepts were somewhere back in there and they just had to get dusted back up. But learning how to build in production for a startup is very different from just learning it in school. And my co-founder had to teach me a lot and really invest in me so that I could contribute to the company as a software engineer. But it was very, very critical, especially because in the early days, there wasn't really a lot to do but code. And so Gil, my co-founder, really spent that time like working with me, answering questions. And back then there wasn't AI. So he really had to spend the time like teaching me concepts. We had to look through Stack Overflow together. And it was definitely a little bit slower, but so worth it, because once we started the company, I was able to just go like off and running and really add a lot.
You mentioned back there, most of the AI tooling wasn't around. I think you started the company 2020, which is a short time ago, but it's longer than, I guess, late 22, 23, where we really saw the explosion of all this AI tooling. How has that affected how you do things internally?
Not a ton. We still are very AI forward. We really encourage a lot of our team members to use AI as much as possible. If they have any questions, they use all of our like AI search tools. If they have any, we're really, really pushing the team towards mass productivity with AI. And there's of course a lot of other productivity tricks without AI as well, like using shortcuts, making sure that you know how to like use all the applications that are available as resources for yourselves to be as productive as possible. But yeah, we just really push the team towards making yourself as productive as possible, because that is a unique advantage for yourself and then also for the business.
And so take us a little bit back to your background. What is it that led you to eventually start Merge? Maybe you started coding at 12. When did you know you wanted to build something?
So I really didn't for a long time until I came up with the idea for Merge. Well, rewinding back, so I started coding at a pretty young age. I was really, really interested in like understanding how to become like a great engineer, and went to college studying computer science. But I think pretty quickly when I started meeting a lot of other really smart people, it was clear I probably wasn't going to be the best software engineer in the world. And I also had a clear gap of understanding what business concepts looked like. I didn't understand how to read financial statements. I couldn't really evaluate if an idea was good or not. And so while I was in college, I decided I wanted to fill in those gaps and go into finance. And so I went down the route of investment banking, worked at Credit Suisse. It was a great experience there, worked really hard for 2 years and really learned a lot from like the basics of business. And after that, went down the traditional path, pursued private equity, but it allowed me to move to San Francisco. So I joined Silver Lake's growth equity fund. I had the opportunity to meet a lot of founders in those days because they were pitching for growth investments. And I also learned a lot from that experience too, from like what the VC angle looked like. But I think one gap that I realized was I didn't actually understand what it was like to work at a company. I was only seeing it in a model, and I was also just hearing it anecdotally. And I felt like it was another really big gap in my knowledge, and I wanted to just get my hands dirty and work at a startup. So I started interviewing, networked with some people from college, and got the opportunity to be chief of staff to the CEO at Expanse, which back then was called KDM. And that was a fantastic opportunity. I worked directly with the CEO. I saw everything. I worked with all the different departments in the business. And it was such a great learning experience because Tim, the CEO, is probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. And he really spent a lot of time mentoring me, teaching me a lot, and explaining why he was making certain decisions and what was going on in the business. And that's how I ended up coming into the issue of integrations, because around 2019 in cybersecurity, a lot of companies were starting to add ticketing integrations to their products. And we actually didn't have any integrations at the time. And it was starting to impact our sales team because the sales team was losing deals, even though we had the best product in the market, just purely based on integrations. And it didn't really seem fair. So we started trying to build out these integrations by hiring a team, but that was super expensive for our R&D line and our P&L. And it took us also a long time to launch the first few integrations. So I think seeing it from a business perspective, I started trying to dig in on why this is such a big problem and why it was so hard. And I was very lucky that one of my best friends from college was head of engineering in a recruiting tech company, very different industry, but running into the same exact problem with recruiting integrations. And he was able to see why it was so difficult from an engineering and product perspective.
Let's go back to your investment banking and PE days. This is a path where you work very hard, and I personally know the benefits you can get, but also it's a path that from outsiders, maybe in like the internet discourse, gets a lot of criticism. What is your take? Would you recommend this to someone who one day aspires to maybe build a company or just do something that is not investment banking but tech related later on?
I think it depends on what you want to do. If you are a software engineer and you're a really great software engineer, I don't think you should be doing that because there's a lot of other career paths for you. I think if you're non-technical and you are really passionate about understanding like the fundamentals of business and you think that this could be the correct path for you, you should pursue it. I don't know necessarily if you want to move into startups, whether going into investment banking first to do that is necessarily the right idea, but it's always a great training ground and it gives you a lot of great opportunities in the future. And you also just get muscles in like attention to detail, work ethic that you can't quite get from other career opportunities. You also learn a level of professionalism that I think is unique and you can't unlearn, which I think is also very valuable. So there are a lot of valuable skill sets, but again, it's kind of hard to say. I feel like everything works out the way it's supposed to for people's careers as long as you are really ambitious and know which direction you are going to go in long term. But everything is also just changing so rapidly. I think back then when I was doing investment banking, it was a clearly very popular path that a lot of really smart people were going down. Now I think it's a little bit different because tech can also pay really well. A lot of smart people are also going to tech instead. So I just think that things have changed quite a bit in the industry. Obviously in investment banking now, a lot of analyst salaries have increased to try to compete against tech. So who knows where things are going to balance out long term. But either way, like when you're young and you're looking for your first career path, I think you want to see where a lot of really smart people are going and try to work with them too, because you want to learn from the best and you want to see what the best looks like so that you can start benchmarking towards that.
Shensi, a lot of investors love to invest in second or third time founders, right? You were a first time founder. Merge is actually doing very well. You guys are growing fast. You've also managed to raise pretty meaningful capital. What were some of the challenges as a first time founder that you encountered?
Lack of confidence. I think that's like the hard part is you're not necessarily the most confident, but that is so outweighed by energy and naivety that it doesn't even matter because you are so naive that you are accidentally confident. And then you also have so much energy because you are younger that you are able to just brute force through the confidence that, to be honest, I don't know if I could do this again. And I understand that people love investing in second and third time founders. But sometimes if like the first one takes a lot of energy out of you, I don't know if it's necessarily the best idea to invest in the second or third one because the first one, you really put everything in it. And again, I just don't know if I could replicate the amount of energy that I put into Merge into another business.
Yeah. You also had the advantage that you had an insight, right? And you guys, in your previous company, you guys try to build similar solutions. So you productized what you did before, right? There's also this other vertical. There's like a first-time founder, insider or outsider, right, of the industry. It sounds like you were already an insider, but you, as a first-time founder, you didn't know what you didn't know, and then that gave you the energy to just, go for it.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I agree. I definitely had some advantages where I had connections in Silicon Valley. I lived in San Francisco. I had connections in VC. And I think sometimes when you're a first time founder, you don't have those advantages. I also got a lot of advice from good friends on fundraising, how to hire, and that helped me a lot. And I'm sure if you didn't have those experiences or those connections, you would have made a lot of mistakes in your first business that you then would be able to avoid in your second one while you are still young. But yeah, for me, we really avoided a lot of those mistakes. Like our early hires were fantastic, and we were able to fundraise from great VCs. And I think we were able to avoid a lot of those mistakes because of the great people that we had around us giving us advice.
Can you share how did you land your first customers?
Just a lot of outbound. So we spent a year in stealth purely building, making sure our product was ready for that first customer. We knew it was probably going to be a difficult onboarding experience because we were infrastructure. It was going to be very feature rich, and we really wanted our product to be ready. So we spent a lot of time just heads down coding and building and battle testing our product. And then when we onboarded our first customer, it was after outbounding hundreds of logos. I was spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, reaching out to people, trying to see if anyone would give us a chance. And a lot of people just wouldn't because we were so early and so small. And it's very risky taking a bet on a small company as a core part of your infrastructure. But thankfully, our first customer, they actually were using another competitor of ours that had just come out like a few months before us, and their product was not really ready. And they were looking for something a little bit more mature. So those months in stealth really helped us convince this first customer to take a chance on us because we had really done a lot of that work ahead of time.
So maybe tell us what type of customers you were serving initially and where you are today.
So it was mostly companies that were under like around 20 employees. We were scared of onboarding companies that were a lot larger because we just weren't sure what the experience was going to be like. And also if our 5-person team could really support them. So it's mostly outbounding companies under 50 employees, but hoping that mostly it was like the 20 employee count that would onboard. And yeah, they would sign. You have a shared Slack channel. We'd really do anything that they wanted, making sure they were having a really great experience and just 24/7 on the clock for them. But now it's a very different game. Now we're really serving a lot of large financial services, public companies, and then also just large scale tech companies as well. So of course we still have a lot of startups that are using our products. I love having those customers, especially because like a lot of them are the future. But now we're a very much more mature organization with a much more mature product and have invested a lot in security, scalability, quality. And so it's a blessing that we are now able to serve some of the largest financial services companies in the world.
And what have you learned about outbound go-to-market? I'm sure, the organization has evolved a lot.
So much. In the beginning, a lot of word of mouth helped us get great inbound, and it was mostly small startups. That was fine for the beginning, especially because you're just trying to like get the motion, you're trying to practice, you're trying to understand what your script looks like. But now that we're heavily enterprise, a lot has changed. It's a lot of like in-person meetings. It's a lot more like multi-touch. You have to find the right organization within a large company. And I actually did an internship at Goldman Sachs as a software engineer during college. And I think doing that internship when I was like a sophomore taught me a lot about like how these organizations work and the type of personas that are at those businesses and how big these financial services companies like and their product and engineering teams are. And so that has given me also a perspective of like when we're talking to these companies, how do we talk about the business? They're probably not going to know a lot of the startups that we currently work with. So we need to reference other large financial services, other large consulting companies that use us and really give them these like examples so they can understand what we do.
Going back a little bit to your year as a stealth company, and I guess going forward, are there some engineering principles that you have as a company at Merge that result in you building, a good product?
It's not engineering necessarily, but it's just customer obsession and really caring about the customer experience. So I think every decision came down to what is the best customer experience versus what is easier for us to implement, because it's always when you're dying and you're super like you're not sleeping a lot, you're super tired, it's always easier to make the decision like, okay, let's just do the shortcut because it's easier for us internally versus like this is a much better customer experience. So let's do the harder things so that they have so they feel like it's a better product. So we were just always prioritizing the customer over ourselves in the beginning. And I think that was very important. Another thing that was also important, but not necessarily a customer experience, but was just investing in security very early. We always prioritize security, got our SOC 2 Type 2 certification, pretty quickly started getting our ISO 27001 certification as well, just because we just knew customers were going to care a lot about this. We wanted them to feel comfortable. We also knew they were going to have conversations with their customers because we were a sub-processor. We just wanted everyone to have an easier experience. And so for us, having a great security posture, that would help our customers and then therefore give them a better customer experience too.
I mean, that's a constant challenge. You mentioned security. There's a whole industry of companies just protecting other firms, right? Has this become harder? Obviously, this is key. This is absolutely important for you guys. Have you seen an increase in maybe fraudulent attacks or cybersecurity, just threats in general?
As you get bigger, of course, there's more eyeballs on you. And so you always need to be more vigilant. And so we've matured a lot as a business over time. We've hired a head of security. He's done an amazing job for us. But yeah, especially we've always continued to increase our security posture as we started onboarding larger and larger customers. I mean, it's been interesting seeing a lot of these AI companies are actually even more intense about security than financial services.
So as you go through hyper growth and you serve a higher number of customers, stakes are higher, but you want to keep your velocity. Maybe share a little bit of your relationship with your co-founder, Gil. How do you make decisions? How have you learned to have a good relationship with your co-founder?
I've just known Gil for such a long time. We're best friends from college, and I think that foundation has really helped us just know that it's not anything that we do or any decision that we're making or any feedback that we give to each other is for the business. It's not out of malice. It's not selfish. It's not for any other reason but to make the business successful. And I think that has helped us a lot. In addition, we just have a lot of fun together at work. Like our team is just so fun. It's just like a blast. Like even if we're going through like a really crazy time, everyone's working a lot, we're like there's really difficult decisions. Because Gil and I have so much fun at work together, our whole team and everyone that we've hired also has a lot of fun together at work. So I think that has also just helped a lot, just making sure like everyone has a really great relationship. We're 5 days a week in the office, and that has made a lot of trust very easy to create among our team members, and also especially me and Gil. So I think just like having a previous relationship, continuing to invest in it, hiring people that we feel really strongly about who are also cohesive with like our relationship, and also just coming from the understanding that like in the end, like we both want Merge to be successful. That's the core thing.
And when it comes to getting across difficult decisions as a company, do you have a framework of how you approach this difficult decisions?
No, just because it's different every single time. Obviously, everything we are really trying to make sure that it makes sense for the business financially. We're looking at opportunity costs. We're trying to think about the human impact. But yeah, it's not necessarily like a formula that we use every single time, just because the amount of effort required for the decision can vary quite a bit. And if something's faster and doesn't require that much, I don't want to force us into a process.
Now, what's your take on the whole debate of in-person, remote first, hybrid? Where do you guys fall?
I think each company can choose their own style. To be honest, I don't really care what other companies do. It doesn't really matter to me. But I think for Merge, we are an in-person company, and it is a unique advantage for our business. But being remote is also a unique advantage for other businesses. It's just not our unique advantage. For us, like I think one thing that we really wanted to create was what Silicon Valley looked like before COVID. People were really passionate about their companies. They loved working there. They had so many friends from them, and they felt like they were really part of a team. And that was very important for me and Gil when we were starting this business. It wasn't just to like you just log onto Slack and start like slacking some person and just like seeing if the circle is green. We wanted to have everyone be in person together, really create relationships, and just be able to move very quickly from just grabbing someone in the office. So we've continued to do that. It was very difficult, especially because we started June 2020, but we've really been able to continue pushing through it. And now I'm seeing a lot of other companies moving towards a similar model, and we just haven't deviated. So again, I don't feel strongly about what other companies do. I just know for Merge, this is the right decision for us.
So that's part of the culture, of course. What are other dimensions of company culture that you think about that are important to you?
People have to be extremely enthusiastic and care a lot. So part of the interview process is the cultural part. Like you have to be a culture ad, you have to care about the business, and you really, really need to make sure that you are energizing for other people around you. Because if we're interviewing you and you're kind of like, oh, like I don't care, and like I'm just like tired, and you're like a drain on the business and like everyone around you, then it just brings the energy of everyone down. But if you're energizing, and maybe you might not be like the most energizing that day, but everyone around you is energizing, it can make your day a lot better and make you more productive too. So that's a core part of like our company culture.
Yeah, it's crazy how one or two people that are not the right cultural fit can really poison the well, right? And especially if it doesn't fit what you are looking for. How many people today at Merge?
We're currently 110 people.
You're a different company than you were at 50. You're a different company than you were at 25 people. How have you adapted to these new reality? Because you also have to reinvent yourself.
Painfully. There's no like easy answer. But yeah, just like as the company has grown, like you just notice that certain things that you used to do aren't working anymore. And so you just have to adapt. I've gotten great introductions to other founders who are a few steps ahead of me, who have given me great advice and have also just been a great like great just people to talk to when it comes to like, oh, is this unique to me? Has this happened to you before? And everyone has just been really open about having similar experiences. And so I've been able to learn a lot from other people, which has been I've just been very lucky.
How about on the fundraising side? What have you learned about raising capital? What should first-time founders that are about to go raise capital, what should they keep in mind?
There is a process and there is a game, and you need to learn it. I think a lot of people come in being very naive, like, oh, like I'm just gonna go in and pitch my idea and like reveal my heart, and then someone will believe in me. And unfortunately, that's just not it. Like there is a process. There is a way that you talk to VCs, and there's a way that you run a process. The good news is there's so many resources online. So many VCs have blogs about the fundraising process, like how you do outreach, how you get the meetings booked, and how you organize your process. And you just need to follow those steps. So don't be like, I think a lot of founders are overconfident and they're like, oh, like it'll just work out for me. And sure, you might be able to get like a not great VC if you do get fundraising, but why would you not want to maximize your chance of success? And why would you not want to be more prepped? So I highly encourage all founders to go look for those resources. I know Mark Schuster from Upfront Ventures has some great resources. I used to go through all of those before we started fundraising. But there's so much out there. So you should definitely go look at it.
Absolutely. Even just listen to podcasts, not plugging this one, but just in general, it's a beautiful way to learn directly from the source, right? And do you think proximity to capital is important? Do you think it's important for founders to be in Silicon Valley, New York, or other similar cities?
I think if you don't have any connections, it is, because then it's easier for you to meet someone in person and have it become a warm intro. If you do have existing relationships, it doesn't matter where you are. You can fundraise from like Antarctica. Like it literally doesn't matter because people already know you. But if you don't and you're an outsider and you're trying to become an insider, moving to these cities does help. It sucks, but it really does help. And even living in San Francisco for the 4 years that I was there, I learned so much about the culture, and I got a deep appreciation for history in the Valley. And I also just learned so much anecdotally from other people around me, and every single person that I met became helpful for my career. So living in San Francisco is just like an essential part of my personal career journey. But again, it depends. It just depends on if you really want to maximize your chances of success, but you don't have to. It just worked for us.
So when you think of the next few years, let's not go too far out, but when you think of the next 2-3 years of Merge, where would you like to be when we catch up again in a few years?
I want pretty much every single large financial services company to be using Merge. What we're seeing increasingly is a lot of startups started with API AR use cases and of course are now incorporating AI, but a lot of them included a lot of integrations in their products. And we were very fortunate to be powering those integrations for those companies. So these included like corporate credit card companies, procurement companies, just looking at any transaction data. All of those different use cases have increasingly started moving to large financial services. So we're seeing like these top 10 banks launching competitive products. So maybe like corporate travel, you name it, like all those different products are now getting branded under like large financial services. And these companies need to be able to compete with the startups. And so they're starting to add integrations into their products. And we're starting to be able to be that integrations infrastructure layer for those companies. It's still early days. We're powering like a few banks right now, and then some other financial services companies, and of course, a lot of the large consulting companies as well. But I want Merge to be the default integrations layer whenever you think about adding integrations to your product.
Let's assume we move in the direction that a lot of people think we're moving, and that's an AI agentic world, right? If that becomes the default reality, do APIs become a stronger use case, or does it weaken the case for APIs?
Absolutely, because a lot of actions are not possible unless you have API access. I'd be curious to see what ends up happening over time with the ecosystem. What we're noticing is Of course, before AI, a lot of companies were becoming more and more open. So they're allowing people to build on top. You just could self-serve. You could do whatever you wanted with their APIs. I'm curious if it ends up becoming a little bit more closed and partnerships and human-to-human interactions and handshake agreements become more important over time because of AI. But APIs unlock so much functionality. And of course, you can use scrapers, but that ends up creating a lot of like weak integrations. Things will break, creates a lot of maintenance. So we'll end up seeing how the market ends up playing out, but APIs are here to stay.
And at Merge, do you envision kind of becoming an ecosystem where external developers can actually build specialized maybe apps or connectors, or is that already happening, or is that part of the vision?
I would love for that to happen, yes. We're probably a little far out from that, but one day.
You can only dream, right? Very cool. So switching gears a little bit, how do you like to consume new information? Do you like books? Do you like podcasts? What do you like?
Yeah, I pretty much have no hobbies but reading. I love reading. I love exercising, and I just read and consume like content while I'm exercising. So podcasts all the time. I try to get as much information both on like the news, tech, any updates in like the industry as much as possible from like that time that I have. I just think it's super important to make sure as the founder that you are always keeping up with the industry. And it's very important to be listening to like what other leaders are saying.
And do you have one or two podcasts or books that you often recommend maybe to your team or people in the industry?
Not quite, just because tastes are so differing now. And I don't want to assume what people will prefer or not prefer. Also, just again, a lot of my friends don't compete in similar industries, and what the data that they need to consume is going to be very different because they're not selling to a similar persona.
So it sounds like you're very specialized. You're not reading, Dostoevsky novels. You're reading like very specialized. What's happening in your industry? What's next? What are the recent developments?
Not quite. I definitely consume a lot of books that are not tech related because I do think it's important to have an opinion outside of tech that is different from other people. I think a lot of people in tech consume the same exact content over and over again, and so I try to diversify what I'm listening to. So I'll listen to a lot of I'll read a lot of books that are very varying. So like Reese Witherspoon's like book club, but I'll also read like philosophy books. I'll also read like tech biographies, and I'll also read like I don't know, like an accounting book because it's important for me to understand the fundamentals of accounting. Like I'll do that as well. Similar with podcasts. Like I'll listen to like podcasts about celebrity gossip, but then I'll also listen to tech podcasts, and I'll also listen to any AI specific podcasts too, to just make sure that I'm understanding what's going on. I just think having a wide like exposure is very important because people in Silicon Valley listen to the same things over and over and over again. And if you do that, you're just not going to be able to create any alpha. And it's very important to make sure you have some kind of different opinion from other people.
No doubt. Well, Shensi, thank you for spending this time with us. Fascinating stuff. Excited for what you are building at Merge, and I'm sure it's only going to get bigger.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Fintech Leaders podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or investment advice.